Here we are, living through the first pandemic of my life, and I assume the first of yours. Right now my regular computer is poorly disposed, so I'm using this backup computer until I assemble a new one. Any videos I do aren't likely to have much in the way of video clips for a while, as this computer is very weak and I don't want to be rendering for a year straight, so for now it's a static background, and just me speaking with noticeably degraded audio. Well, what will I speak about? What else but the political impacts of the virus? Who has handled it best seems to be an evolving question, and it looks like South Korea and Singapore are doing a lot better than anywhere else. This may be because they did extremely extensive testing and were able to track cases a lot better. There's also a lot of conflicting information on masks, with the World Health Organization, that I'll refer to as the WHO from now on, still arguing against them, while on the other hand there are papers suggesting that widespread mask wearing by the public has a drastic reduction effect. Wearing masks is already culturally normalised in Asia, and therefore production is a lot easier too. In the West, not only not wearing masks, but shouting at people who do wear them is being normalised by the WHO. It's getting to the point where people are being attacked in the street if they dare. There's some who have theorised that they know masks are at least somewhat effective, but that they are trying to reserve them for health workers. However, in our sedated culture where panic is always the worst thing possible, some hospitals have even been forgoing masks out of fear of alarming people. My mother was recently in hospital about gallstone issues, not coronavirus, and she's out now. But she reported little wearing of masks and had to take her own hygiene measures, refusing to drink from a glass that was placed by her bedside. Recently it seems there's been a pushback and we might be due a reversal of that position. We could definitely stand to take widespread mask wearing from Asian culture, and then maybe we'll have the production scale to not have to worry about shortages for medical personnel. Not all Asian practices are to be lauded, however, and it's pretty clear that Chinese cultural practices, particularly the exotic wet markets, contributed to the development of the virus, which is something that was warned about well in advance. Really though, the main blame should go to the Chinese government, and the physical assaults on people who are Asian are pretty shameful. The Chinese government is being cheered for instituting massive quarantines, but the situation that made such lockdowns necessary was exacerbated by 2 months of trying to shut down whistleblowers. It got so big so fast that welding people into their flats became necessary. Big points docked for China there in being the origin and bungling the initial stages when there was a chance to stop the breakout. Meanwhile, even without overt censorship, Western media and health organisations like the WHO spent a lot of time downplaying this through January and early February, when random internet bloggers were well ahead of the game, though some among the mainstream recognised the clear danger back then. Points go to Tucker Carlson, for example. Anyone who saw the lengths China was going to should have realised. You don't have guys in hazmat suits spraying everything, and you don't build hospitals for thousands in a week unless something is up. Again, the WHO avoided calling it a pandemic because they didn't want people to panic. However, an appropriate level of fear earlier on avoids panic later. For example, if people stock up on food earlier and over a longer period of time, you get less dangerous panic buying later, and markets have time to adjust to the sudden increase in demand. Unfortunately, you are dealt the administration you are given. And so we arrive to the current state of affairs. China didn't realise the true scale until it was too late, and so they had to do massive lockdowns to contain it. We didn't either, and so now we are having to do the same massive lockdowns in a culture that isn't used to such levels of authoritarianism. We're facing that trade-off between being able to produce and having to keep distant from each other. Depending on how long these measures last, the political fallout will be more or less severe, of course, but certainly massive state action and authoritarian measures absolutely are needed in a time of total crisis. Lockdowns have become necessary. This helps this kind of besieged view of the world in general. On the other hand, there are some narrower areas where libertarianism has been shown correct, particularly when it comes to how the FDA bungled testing kits, and how certain masks that are functionally equivalent to the N95 standard are not allowed to be used by hospitals because they are not certified, a process that takes weeks. Slow regulatory bureaucracies and burdensome regulations are taking a hit. This is one area where authoritarianism and libertarianism converge in that you need some decisive actor to cut through regulations and simply declare that certain things are allowed. Sometimes this means that we have more freedom to act if it helps produce the innovation needed to fight the virus, and other times, such as with lockdowns, we have way less freedom to act. So overall, we're heading towards authoritarianism. Another more worrying development is the desire to release prisoners from some quarters, especially when it's twinned with the pronouncement that police will no longer be responding to burglaries, or even necessarily to assaults if there is no immediate injury. The places that are deciding to practice these policies have perfectly vindicated the guns rights and self-defence crowd more generally, by effectively declaring, "You're on your own." Leftist economic politics are helped not in the regulatory arena so much, but in the fiscal arena, and we are seeing economic measures meant to protect people's income. Even Mitt Romney is behind an emergency basic income in America. We're also getting to the point where the banks may be in danger because landlords of rented properties will not be able to pay their own mortgages because their renters are going on rent strike. This will probably necessitate government paying people's rent for them in order to keep the system stable. But if it does collapse, then score one for the mutualists and left-wing market anarchists who rank possession above absenteeism. We'll also all be living in a Mad Max hellscape, but ho-hum. Nationalist politics are also vindicated in two key areas. Clearly closing borders earlier on would have helped slow the virus, and countries like China are now closing their borders to prevent reinfection via other countries, assuming they're not majorly lying about their numbers in the first place. Obviously this comes at a cost if you do rely on migrant labour, as we do now, very heavily. But the entire point of the nationalists is that there needs to be reform in the market and that citizens need to do those jobs instead of handing them off to foreign labour on illegally low pay. So transitionally it's going to cost us, but then so are lockdowns and the other general measures in tackling a pandemic. Border closures are just the same concept on an international level. The other key area where America Firsters have it right is the need to claw back some small portion of autarky from outsourcing. Although free trade means all countries benefit positive sum in terms of immediate economic costs when the proceeds of specialisation are pulled together, the big downside is that assets of strategic value and of importance to national survival are now throttled. An American company in China might on paper be owned by an American, but if shit hits the fan it can easily be appropriated. Foreign ownership of domestic assets also allows other countries to export vital goods back to the homeland. This is happening as we speak with medical equipment. It's also not lost on me the importance of an aspect of futurist politics that I often revisit on this channel, and that is of course automation. Automation benefits from this crisis because lockdowns show the fragility of human labour systems. The more an economy is automated, the less difficult the trade-off is between producing and limiting the spread of the virus. Hypothetically, crazy hypothetical, in a 100% automated economy, no one has to rub shoulders at all in order for work to be done. Obviously, we are absolutely nowhere near that, but every gradation up the scale helps. And it shows to me the need for governments to help accelerate that process. It's a matter of national security. I can only make very general speculations though. Working out exactly how long this will last and how bad it will be is being fiercely debated by the experts right now. If we bungle this, we may see a rise in blunt authoritarianism that we can't claw back after the crisis is over, because people will rightly say that it was necessary because of the crisis, rather than seeing the need for a context-dependent politics that can flexibly respond, rather than always fighting yesterday's war. It's perhaps not the most important thing to think about right now, but it is worth considering. I think democracy is particularly weak here. The attempts on both sides to slip partisan legislation into emergency bills has been disgraceful. But more generally, if the populace is primed to think in a particular direction, they're not able to switch easily. Democracies are slow in that respect. Not that I'm saying we should live in a dictatorship. Overall, after people downplaying it so much, we would be overplaying it to say that it's the end of the world. But what exactly do you count as the end of the world anyway? If a lockdown had to continue for a whole year, the economy would almost certainly go tits up. If everything fell into total chaos, then perhaps the only politics that will gain will be warlordism. And so we come to the end. My plans for regular videos are on hold until this is over. Videos from now on will probably be more frivolous than usual. I might play some emulator games that this weak, pathetic computer can actually handle and just upload that. If I do have time-to-time insights, I'll want to keep the videos shorter than usual, and perhaps largely off the cuff. But for now, stay safe and good night.